Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Horse Barn Management Show. My name is Sherry Grunska, and I am here to talk to you about your horse boarding facility, your horse business, and any problems you're having. And, the reason I started this YouTube channel was to really talk about the real things that happen when you have a horse business that no one talked about when I started. We've been boarding horses now 17 years, so no one talked about it way back then, and I had no place to go. And we did everything. It seemed like we took 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Um, we lost a lot of money early on, and we just couldn't seem to get it right. It took me a long time to figure out, okay, why is this not working? And it seemed like everybody was in the same boat, but no one was talking about how to make your business better and keep it healthy and strong, and make it better for the horses, make it better for your clients, your employees, and for you and your family. And it's really important to have it right for you and your family because it does cause stress when you walk out of that barn, and you could be walking up to your house on the same property. And it can be very stressful if you can't get things right and even separate the two sometimes. So today on this show, I wanted to talk about a subject that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I'm kind of like the queen of doing it wrong in the beginning. I did everything wrong in the beginning when we built our barn. And just to give you a little background, my husband and I, in 2005, with our two little girls, who are all now adults now, we built a huge barn, and we were going to board horses and do it as a full-time business, which meant we were planning on quitting our jobs and being home and taking care of 40-something horses on our property. And I thought it was going to be easy. I had horses a good part of my life. I'd even worked at some barns. And I thought, oh, we can do this. It'll be easy. We'll be at home. I can walk back in the house and just enjoy the day. And I was really in for a rude awakening. It was not what I had expected. And we had a lot of money on the line because we had took out a huge loan and we had to pay it back. And so there was a lot of stress there. And years later, I decided to write a book about it to help others. And then I started podcasting and talking to people. And even over the last couple of years, I've done consulting where I've gone to people's barns and helped them walk through some of the problems they're having. Because when you're in the middle of it, it's kind of like, I always think of it, it may sound a little corny, but like a hamster. The day you open your doors, you put that hamster on the wheel and it just keeps going, because now the horses are here. And so the chores never stop 7 days a week. So you never get a chance to breathe. So when things do come up, a lot of times you're so tired, you don't want to deal with it. You put it on the back burner, or it's too much. You're too in the middle of it and you don't know how to fix it. And then the next day it just happens all over again. And it's that darn hamster that's on the wheel and you can't get off. Because you're dealing with live animals and they're here every day and they need your care, no matter what your financial situation looks like, no matter what you're dealing with in your personal life. And so that's why I'm back here doing the Horse Barn Management Show, is because I really want to help people make their businesses all that can be, because I feel that the horse industry is hurting in some ways with that. Barns are going out of business. There are frustrated horse owners that feel like they were in a barn that the care went downhill, or maybe things weren't relayed to them clearly. The communication line is broken. Sometimes clients don't understand all that goes into a boarding stable and what the overhead costs are. And sometimes barn owners don't even understand what all the overhead costs are when they first start up. And I was one of those people. We had no idea of all the expenses. Even though I did a business plan, when I look back, the bank probably shouldn't have approved us for our loan, because when I look back now, I see we were way off base on so much. And they did approve us, and this was a long time ago, but now looking forward, I can see why you really have to be careful, because you don't want to get in a mess and you don't want to lose the farm. So Anyways, welcome to the show. And today we're going to talk about something that I was asked about. It was a question I was asked, and it was about disciplines, writing disciplines, and how do you make it work, or does it not work at times? How do you figure that all out with your boarding stable? And the truth is sometimes it doesn't work with multi-disciplines. And I'll be really specific in this to kind of give you some ideas so you can think about it, whether you're building a place or whether you're buying a place or whether you're in a place already and you're having problems. So I did what most new people do when they open a business is you advertise, and you want to take anybody because you have stalls to fill. And you know that you have so many that have to be filled to pay your bills. And at that point, as a brand new business, you don't have a reputation. People don't know who you are, and you're desperate. So you'll take any person, usually, any kind of discipline, and you're so busy at that point, you don't even have time to think about, okay, what can go wrong? And then as you get into it, things start to go wrong. And that's exactly what happened with us. To give you some numbers, we have a huge indoor arena. It's 80 by 200. It's a beautiful indoor arena. And we live in Wisconsin, so it's cold. So you have to have one to be in business. You just have to have an indoor arena. And that's a great size. But when you have some really strong disciplines that are really just so different, and I'm going to give two examples. For example, maybe people who jump horses, and then you have speed or barrel racers. Those two disciplines will not do well in the arena together for obvious reasons. And if you don't have a facility that is big enough to handle both of them, or have two arenas, or, and certain rules that apply so that you don't have people getting upset at each other, you're going to have problems. And I didn't even think that through. So, you have people who are barrel racing or doing speed events, and their whole thing is Mach 1, going as fast as they can, which is great. I have nothing against it. I love barrel racers. I did it when I was young. But then you have people who are jumping or trying to set up a jump course in the same arena. Now you're dealing with clients, and clients who are frustrated because they come out to the barn and they want to do their discipline, and maybe they have to wait, or they can't, or they're asked to maybe not, or only use part of the arena. Even in our arena, which is 80 by 200, it's not really safe to have someone running full speed with barrels and practicing if you have someone trying to jump at the other end. It's just not, there's not enough room. And the same would be, sometimes you can kind of look at it a little bit like if you have people who do ride the rails. For example, you might have saddlebreds that ride the rails, and they like all the noise and the loudness, or Morgans, and they're showing. And then you have people who trail ride and want a really quiet horse. Once in a while, that can cause a problem too if you have people that aren't respectful of other people, because this one discipline likes their horses really animated and loud, and they're going to do lots of things like throw sand up in the air and do all this stuff to get those horses really animated. And they're going to have chains, maybe things around their legs, things that make noise. And then you're going to have someone who comes and they want a quiet barn, and they're going to trail ride. And their horse gets freaked out, or they're nervous to ride. So then they don't come out and ride when the other discipline is riding. And because of that, it starts to cause a problem. And sooner or later, you're going to have it come to a head where either people are going to leave. Well, they're probably going to come talk to you first, but then they're going to leave. And then you have it all over again, where you have new horses come in, new clients come in. You have to get everybody used to each other. You have to get the horses used to each other in the herds. There's a lot of work that goes on to it. So what I tell people, it is so important to really kind of wrap your head around what kind of barn you want. And, depending on if you have a big arena, a small arena, That will make a difference. The other part of it too is you got to do a barn that fits you and your lifestyle, and something that you're used to. And we do have different disciplines here at our barn right now, but we don't, we don't have saddlebreds that are, really showing and they're in all the time and they really want them animated. We don't have that. We don't have barrel racers because we have a lot of people that jump and do hunter jumper and dressage and stuff like that, and it just doesn't feel like it works. So when someone comes to our barn for a tour, I'm very clear about that, because what I don't want is someone to sign the boarding contract, come to our barn and be highly disappointed because there's problems and they can't get in the arena and it just doesn't fit. I truly believe the more honest you are with people that are coming for a tour, and the more you start to gain a reputation of what kind of barn you are, the right people will come to your barn. And when that happens, you're going to have a lot less turnover, much less turnover. You'll have people that will stay for years, even decades, because they know what to expect and they know what kind of barn it is. The other thing to think about when you're running a boarding stable is, unless you have the room and unless you have maybe 2 arenas, all those disciplines are going to come with different equipment. You have your jump standards, you have your barrels, you have people, if they do competition with trail riding, you might have lots of trail equipment. That stuff is all great, but you have to have a place to store it, and you have to make sure that when people are using it, it leaves room for other people to ride, and then they put it away. And unfortunately, most arenas are usually on the smaller end, because they're so expensive to build, and that can pose a problem. So you really want to think that out. And if anything, and I've talked to a few people that do this, if anything, if you're going to have someone who maybe comes and drives horses with a cart, you might have to say, okay, at this barn, we designate certain times if you want to do that. We haven't had to do that, and we have a few people that drive carts here. It hasn't been a problem, but like I said, we have a bigger arena, and so it's not a problem. But if you have a smaller one, you really want to think it through with all the equipment and what goes with that. The other thing to think about with disciplines is your clientele. So you could have beginner riders who are just starting out, and maybe they're going to 4-H shows, just casual shows in the area, and there's no pressure. But if you start getting people who are going to really show big time and more competitively, even go further than that, you really want to think about what that looks like as far as disciplines, because the more you have people that are competing at a much higher level, you're going to be having the trainers that are involved. And we'll get in that in a whole nother subject, because trainers at your barn is a completely different thing that I could talk for hours on. But there's a part of that with those disciplines. And so, for example, barrel racers might only run the barrels a very short time. It's a fast, they run the barrels. They might just do long trotting. There's different things they're going to do for training, where your other disciplines might do a different type of training. And again, if you have a smaller arena, it could pose a problem. The thing I want you to figure out more than anything is, what kind of barn do you want to have? And I want you to advertise for that and get that reputation, because when you get that reputation of, okay, we're a show barn, we're strictly a show barn, the horses are in most of the time, maybe they only get an hour turnout, that if you want that type of barn, then you need to let people know that. Because if you have 25 horses in your barn and you have half the clients want their horses in and half the clients that want their horses out all day long, it's going to make a huge difference on how you're going to do things. And just remember, every time a horse is in the stall longer, like if they're in a stall 24 hours a day, your price needs to reflect that in the board, because you're going to be going through a lot more bedding, probably hay, and it's just a lot more work and labor, so employees. So that's another thing to think about. Also, you need to think about the disciplines as far as what their normal protocols are. For example, let's say Morgans that show high-end showing A shows. A lot of them wear big shoes or the saddlebreds, and a lot of those horses don't go outside because they can't, because the shoes are so big. They might go out in a very small private turnout, but they definitely don't want the horse pulling their shoe, and they don't want the horse ripping part of its hoof off, and they definitely don't want them hurt. And if you don't have a place for private turnout to handle those types of horses, they're going to be sitting in their stall. Or if you do herd turnout, those horses probably won't be able to turn out with them because of their show shoes. And it might only be for the summer months. It might only be for show season, but it still is going to make a huge difference. So you really want to think about that and how you want to organize your pastures, your paddocks, your private turnout. Different disciplines will do that. And then you might have a situation like a lot of people that show halter horses maybe turn their horses out at night. And, even though I don't know if it's really a different discipline, but they are doing different stuff. They'll turn their horses out at night because they don't want their horse's coat to fade, and they want the horses inside. And that is something you have to decide if that is what you want, because that means that you're going to have to decide, do you have shelter out there for those horses that are turned out at night? What if a storm comes up? In the winter, it can get bad. At night, a blizzard can, come at night, and you could be sleeping and the horse is out there. The other thing is the turnout between when horses are coming in and when horses are going out. It will make a difference on your workload and employees if you have employees, because that means you have people doing like a second shift. So we don't have that here. We don't do night turnout, and I know a lot of barns in the area do. And I think it's great if you want to do it, but you just want to think about all the different, excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat. Hold on one second. You want to think about all the different scenarios of having night turnout for certain disciplines versus day turnout. There's nothing wrong with it. You just got to make sure that your barn, your boarding stable is the right stable for you. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be exhausted by working, 24 hours a day, trying to handle all these different things people want. And I get that, because when we first opened, I did that. I said yes to everything. Everything under the sun I said yes to, because I was so worried about losing someone, and money was so tight. And I just thought, we're not going to make it unless we have every stall filled. So I said yes to everything. And it was exhausting for me and David, and it was very stressful. There were times when I would be in tears in the house, because I just thought, this is just crazy how we're living. And we weren't getting enough sleep, and my kids were little. And I know I've talked to a lot of people who have young kids and are trying to board horses, and it's tiring. So I really want you, I guess if I could say anything from this podcast today, I really want you to simplify, and it's okay to say no to certain things and say, you know what? I don't think I want that here. I think I just want to do people that ride for fun or trail ride or casually show. And, maybe you're going to make it a rule that every horse goes out no matter what, and no matter what the conditions. And if that's the case, and someone comes and they have big, huge show shoes on that are extended, they're not going to come there if you're honest with them, and they're going to say, well, that's not going to work for my horse. And you have to be okay with that. And it's hard for people to do that because they worry about the money. But I can tell you, I can promise you, if you are true to yourself and what works for your stable, eventually the right people will come and it'll be a good fit and they'll stay, because there's nothing worse than having someone come and 6 months later they leave because it's not a good fit. And I've had that happen a lot in the beginning, where people came, they thought, oh, a brand new barn, and it just wasn't a good fit. And every time you have turnover, it costs you money. And I want you to just remember that the whole idea is to keep the herds stable, the horses content with each other. Once you get a group of horses that get along, you really want to have it where everybody, the horses know what's going on, the clients know what's going on, and your life is going to get a lot easier. And then even though it's a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour day a job, it's going to seem a lot more doable, especially with this kind of lifestyle. So anyways, I hope I answered some of your questions on a multidiscipline barn. Be smart about how you do it. I have different disciplines in my barn, but I know some disciplines will not work here. And people know that now too, from people I've talked to. They know that this barn won't work for that. And there's one more thing I want to talk about too. Also the horses, when we first opened, our barn had a lot of kids that showed because my kids showed, and it was a show barn in a lot of ways. I mean, we had people that rode for fun, but we had a lot of kids that showed, and even some adults. And as the kids all grew up and they, started going to college, and a lot of boarders got rid of the horses, a lot of parents, and a lot of the horses stopped being ridden. Our barn changed, and even though I wouldn't say it's a change in discipline, it really is a change in clients. And now we have a lot of older people who ride here, retired people, very few people that show. It's much more casual, and probably for that period when my kids were young, it was super fun. Now that I'm older and my husband's older, it's kind of nice having a different type of barn where it's a little quieter and not as much going on. And so you need to think of that too when clients are coming to your place. What kind of barn do you want? Do you want a really active barn where you have, just 20 kids showing and you have trainers and people leaving all the time and coming and going? Or do you want a quieter barn? When I was younger, it was great and I loved it and I don't regret any of it. But now I kind of like a quieter barn. So those are things that change with boarding stables, and especially the barn owners need to think of that, because after all, everything falls back on you. The buck stops with you. So I hope that answers some of your questions about disciplines. And if I missed something or you want something more specific, please write it down below. And if this is the first time watching this and you like what you hear, please subscribe and like it and share with others, because we're here to help people that want to get into this type of business and make their barn successful. And, the next generation is coming up, and we need people who want to board horses and keep it going on. So I want to wish you the very best in your horse business, and God bless you, and thank you, and have a beautiful week, and we'll talk to you later.